And thank you for joining us this morning for us, but whatever time it is for you. We have about 30 minutes together today, and Alex and I want to use about half of that time to give you an overview of the class that we teach on technical foundations for product managers, and then spend the back half of the time on questions. Really, the goal for this is to help you understand if this class might be right for you or some of the material that you might learn. So please put all of your questions into the Q&A feature at the bottom of Zoom, and we'll make sure we get through as many of them as possible at the end. We want to start off just by briefly introducing ourselves and tell you who we are. I'm happy to kick us off. So my name is Anand. It's very nice to meet all of you. A little bit about my product background and my product career. I did my undergrad and my grad at Stanford, both in mechanical engineering and robotics. Wanted to figure out what I wanted to do next. Took a little bit of a circuitous path to product management via chemical engineering, which I don't know if I recommend if that's your career goal, and ended up in a product role for very early in my career. So going in reverse chronological order, I'm currently the SVP of product at a company called Path that helps people find therapists that take insurance. Before this was the VP of product at a startup called Pilot that does back office finance, and funded by Sequoia and Stripe and Index and a few others. Before that was a product lead at Dropbox, which is actually where I originally met Alex, and was a director of product at Gusto as well. And before that was a director of product at Zynga, living my childhood dream of working on games. I ran the Words with Friends studio for a while. And then outside of that, I'm also a teacher. I've been teaching this Reforge course for a while, and I've also been an adjunct at Stanford for 8 or 9 years, teaching product management there in the Graduate School of Engineering. So spent most of my career in product executive roles and also product teaching roles, and very excited to share what I've learned with everybody here. Alex?
Hey everyone, I'm Alex, and similar to Anand, I'll go in reverse chronological order. I am currently the Chief Technology Officer at an organization called US Digital Response. We help governments figure out how to leverage technology more effectively, which is actually very similar to the kind of thing this class is about, just connecting, bridging gaps between PMs and engineers. Here we bridge gaps between technologists and government. Prior to that, I was a director of engineering at Dropbox, where, as Anand mentioned, we met. And I also really love to teach people. I, for over 20 years, have a website called cprogramming.com that has taught something like 100 million people to program in C and C++. It's still available if you're interested in one of those languages, but you probably aren't if you're a PM. I also was a teaching fellow at Harvard University, where I helped teach some of the intro CS classes. And I co-host a podcast called Decoding Sales, where we talk about bridging, again, sales and engineering, the art and science of sales as it applies to life and business. Turns out there's actually a lot of overlap there as well, which is really interesting. So that's a little bit about me. Love to bridge gaps and explain things to folks with different backgrounds. And Anand and I have actually lived the life of working together as an engineer PM pair. I was the tech lead, Anand was the PM for the Dropbox business team when we worked together. And as he mentioned, no, it doesn't actually have a CS background. So we took a lot of our experiences working together from Dropbox and distilled those lessons down into this class to figure out, what are the key things that as a non-technical PM you might need to know about technology and about working on software to be successful. And so this class draws on a lot of the experiences that we took from working together, both in some examples, but also in a lot of the material and themes.
Cool. So we want to talk about what problem we're solving with this course. So let me give a few examples that I'm guessing people here might have run into. You can sort of nod your head or raise your physical hand if this has happened to you. I'm guessing some people here have been a PM on a project at some point in your career, and it's in an execution phase and things are going really well. And your engineering manager comes to you and says, "We've found a problem." And then they say something very technical that you don't really understand, and they end with, "This project is going to take an extra 4 weeks. What do you want to do?" I'm guessing that is a lived experience for many people in this room. Or another thing you might have run into. You're planning a roadmap. Your engineering manager comes to you and says, "We have to refactor the system because it has too much technical debt. It's going to take 2 months. We can't work on anything else for the entire time." What do you do as a PM? Or you're planning a project with your tech lead, and they say it'll take 4 weeks if you do it the hacky way, and 8 weeks if you do it the right way. How do you make those trade-offs? You're working on something with a designer, and you spend 2 weeks building the perfect thing with your customers. You take it to engineering, and the engineer says, "This is impossible because of something about our architecture." All of these, by the way, are real-world scenarios that I have run into in my career. I'm guessing many of you have run into in your career. And they require some amount of technical knowledge to make the right trade-offs as a product manager. I think without that technical knowledge, you can't make good decisions about topics with significant technical components. But the PM job is to make good decisions about things with technical components. So as many of you have probably run into, some level of technical knowledge is basically a prerequisite for accelerating your PM career. If you don't have it, it can result in a bunch of different consequences. The most obvious one is your projects can go poorly. They can be slower or worse. It can hold you back in your career as you struggle to be effective as a PM. One that I don't want to underestimate is it can cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, especially in personal life, which you might bring home after work. You can lose credibility over time with an engineering team, and we don't want any of those things to happen to anybody in the room. So really, that's the core reason that we put this course together, is to help answer those questions and to make sure that if you run into one of the scenarios that I mentioned at the beginning, you are well equipped with the right information to do the right thing. I'm guessing everybody here is also a reasonable self-starter. You volunteered to spend 30 minutes of your time with us to try and answer this question. You have probably tried to educate yourself on this topic. If you type this question into Google, you get 640 million search results for how technical a product manager should be, and the first two are directly contradictory. One of them says you really don't need a technical background, and the next one says you absolutely need it as a mandatory prerequisite. So why is it so hard to answer this question, and why is the material that's out there not doing a good job of it? I think the reason that it's hard to answer is the answer ends up being hyper-specific to you and your situation. So it depends on who you are, depends on where you work, depends on what you know, depends on who your engineering counterpart is. All of those things will result in different answers to this question. So for example, if you're a PM on a brand new AI tool, you probably need to be significantly more technical than someone who works on a SaaS app. Or if you're a PM on an infrastructure team versus a customer-facing team, you'll have a different level of technical knowledge required. Maybe you've taken 2 CS classes in school somewhere and you know a little bit of SQL and that's getting you pretty far. Or maybe you've never written a line of code in your life. So no matter where you are in your career and your personal journey and your role, the answer is going to be different and customized to your situation, which is why things like blog posts or other articles struggle to give you a good answer to this question. The great news is Alex and I spent a lot of time trying to put together a framework for how to answer this question, but we would teach in this class. And you'll all conclude different things from this framework. So you can sort of model a framework as a flowchart or a series of decisions that we ask you to make in conjunction with your engineering team and some things you learn about your company. But we'll use the class to teach you how technical you need to be, and it will spit out an answer that is hyper-tuned to you and your situation. So again, everybody in the class will reach slightly different conclusions. We will teach some of the basic technical concepts that everybody needs to know, but really one of the core deliverables of the class is building what we call this personalized technical roadmap that answers the question how technical you need to be. The answer is different for every single person, but we will teach you the framework and the questions to ask to produce that answer well. A little bit about the way the class is structured. The class is organized around 3 lectures. The first one, we teach you all about, your technical knowledge roadmap. The second one, we teach you a set of key engineering concepts. And then the third one, we teach you how to apply your technical knowledge for best results. The counterintuitive thing that can happen is you can actually become more technical and then become a worse PM. So you want to make sure that you apply the knowledge you're learning in this class to get the best possible outcomes for you and your career. Again, some other details about the course. Alex and I have also built out a really robust technical concepts library, somewhere between 50 and 100 pages of content that we've written on a bunch of key technical concepts that you might need to know. These are things like how do LLMs work? What is a front end versus a back end? Can you explain basics of the internet? How does security and compliance work? A bunch of different technical concepts that you might run into in your career. All of that is available through the course as well. And then in case you can't make it, the lectures are also recorded and shared through the Reforge portal. Who is the class for? So we want to talk a little bit about the target customer for the class. The class is oriented towards product managers. So if you're not in a product manager role, doesn't mean you'll get 0 value out of the class, but we're really focused on people who have PM careers today because we ask you to go through this exercise of saying, talk to your engineering partner for X or talk to your designer for Y. It's mostly oriented towards new career PMs, sort of loosely less than 5 years of experience. It's not a hard cutoff. And again, if you find yourself beyond that threshold, but still think that you really want to learn technical foundations, you will get value out of the class. And then sort of obviously it's oriented towards people with a non-technical background. If you were converted into PM from being an engineer, I don't know if this will be the right class for you. If you came from things like support, sales, success, an MBA background, something like that, this is very much aimed at you. And other than that, it's pretty agnostic. So it works for all industries, hardware and software, company size, the particular company that you work at. And we use a lot of examples from going and talking to your engineering counterparts today. So if you happen to be working in an active role, that is definitely ideal, but not absolutely required. We try to make no assumptions about foundational knowledge. Again, everybody comes from a different place, so we will build things up from scratch. If you have a little bit of knowledge, some of it might be repetitive. We find it's very helpful to make sure that everybody starts from the same foundation. And a little bit about what we want to teach. So we want to teach with frameworks that you can take away to your job. The goal of this class is not to be theoretical, it's to be actionable. We'll focus on real world cases where it's possible to actually give you examples from our lived experience. So again, Alex and I work together at Dropbox. There'll be a lot of Dropbox cases. We'll do some Gusto cases. We'll do some Path cases, and a handful of more. And the class is meant to provide the frameworks while your day job provides the experience. So we will ask you to do things like talk to an engineer at work about blank, and those things are hard to simulate in class. A little bit about the student feedback. I don't want to necessarily read all of this. It's a little bit self-serving, but we do want to emphasize that the student feedback has been really positive. These are all real quotes from people who have taken the class. If you want to take 30 seconds to read them. And Alex and I have been really thrilled to find that the students have found the class actionable, practical, and valuable. Most people walk away from it saying, there's something I learned in this class that I can put into practice immediately, not something that I need to wait 6 months to figure out how to do. And then finally, a little bit about the logistics and the nuts and bolts, and all of this will be sent in an email to everybody here as well. The next enrollments are open, so you can join through the link here, reforge.com. And the next class runs May 14th, May 21st, and May 28th from 8 to 9:30 a.m. We also do office hours, and we'll have some special sessions outside the class where if you need some one-on-one help about your situation, Alex and I can spend 15 minutes with you to help answer those as well. But enrollments are now open if people are interested in signing up. Alex, anything I missed that we want to cover about the class?
I thought that was a great overview.
Perfect. Then let's open it up for Q&A. We want to make sure that we get people's questions answered about what the class is or is not, so you know if this might be a good fit for you.
Terrific. Well, I see a couple of questions have come in the Q&A, so why don't we tackle those first? The first one is from Osley. How was it working together and becoming more technical on the way? What did you try? What did you learn and end up creating this course for?
It's a great question. I would say it was more painful than it needed to be. Maybe that was at least how it felt from my side. Alex, you can tell me if you disagree. And again, I don't have a CS background, so a lot of what I was trying to do was learn this stuff along the way. Obviously, we really enjoyed working together. We've been friends for more than 10 years at this point. That originally came from being an engineering and PM counterpart. We definitely built a strong relationship out of it. But I think one of the reasons we were excited to build this class is it was definitely harder than it should have been because a lot of the stuff we were figuring out for ourselves the first time. Alex, anything you want to add to that?
I think one of the things I would add to that we draw on in the class is that there's a combination of knowledge, technical knowledge that's really useful, and also how you think about what technical knowledge is important. And so we really took away from working together, like what is the right level of technical detail that is necessary for a PM to know. And so we've brought that throughout the entire three-part series plus the technical content of the goal is not to teach you every detail that an engineer might need to know. The goal is to teach you what's useful, and adjudicating that's really helpful and saves people a ton of time. And we spend a lot of time working together and figuring out that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a bunch more questions coming in, so let's keep moving. I think one of them was, maybe you can talk a little bit more depth on this. Is the course open to aspiring PMs planning to pivot into PM from an engineering background?
Answer again, absolutely yes. But we will ask you to do some things in the class, like go chat with people at your company about XYZ thing. So as long as you feel like there's maybe someone on an engineering team who's willing to spend a little bit of time with you and chat with you about sort of a future career aspiration of yours, it should be totally fine. Even if that's not true, you won't get zero value out of the class. We've had people take the class as they're interested in becoming a PM, get the job, and come back to the lecture to the notes later. So it's definitely not zero value, but we also want to be transparent about people who get the most value or people who have an engineering counterpart that they can go to and ask questions. So whether you're in an active PM role or not, as long as you have someone you feel like you can trust or spend 20 or 30 minutes with, those people will get the most value out of the class.
All right, here's a good one. Will there be any coding involved?
We don't do a live coding session. We do have some tutorials on things like SQL and a couple of other places that we will point you to if people are interested. But we actually stayed away from this. And the reason we stayed away from this is there's just infinity resources on how to learn how to code. If you want to learn Python, if you want to learn SQL, if you want to learn Ruby, there's tons and tons of resources on the internet to do that yourself. So you wanted to try and find something that wasn't easily available on the internet. We will direct you to some stuff. So again, in the technical library, if you're interested in learning SQL, for example, we give you a handful of good tutorial sites that we like to do that yourself. But the reason it's not included is there's just a plethora of resources for figuring out how to do the basics of code if you want. And we really want to focus on things that you can't easily find.
Fantastic. All right, there's a few questions that I think I'm going to kind of combine a little bit together. So one person's asking, well, there's 3 classes, an hour and a half each. Is that going to be enough? And then another participant who's asking, so is technical skills information only about 1/3 of the course?
I will try and answer those simultaneously. And the first one, no, as in there's no world here where you walk away from 4.5 hours of lecture and feel like you are buttoned up from a career perspective. But again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make your lived experience more useful. So what I mean by that is the course is meant to teach you a set of frameworks and tools that you can then take to your regular job. So let me give you some examples of things. We'll give you a taxonomy for how to think about technical debt in a roadmap planning process that you can then use every single time you go through a roadmap exercise. So you don't expect in 1.5 hours that you'll nail that exercise, but we do expect that it'll be something that's really useful for you every time you go through a rep. We teach you how to be the right level of technical in your specs, for example. We teach you a little bit about how to do engineering estimation well and why engineering estimation is hard so that if you're constantly moving timelines around, you have better tools equipped to push back on your engineering team. So again, a lot of these things are meant to be tools that you apply every day in your PM or aspiring PM career. We'll teach you the tool, but then you have to apply it to get the maximum amount of knowledge. And then the second one is how much of it is actual technical concepts. So a little bit more than 1/3 of the class. And again, the reason that we did it this way is everybody has a totally different technical background. So we really want to lean on the technical library here, where it's, again, 50 to 100 different pages based on any topic you want. We tried to write material ourselves that is basic and foundational and also linked to external resources so you can learn more. And again, the reason we do it this way is you might know technical topic 1 and not be interested in it, and somebody else is very interested in that topic. So we will spend a little bit more than 1/3 of the time lecturing on things that we think are foundational for everyone to know. What are databases? What are APIs? How do they work? Things like that. What's a 3-tier architecture of a modern SaaS system? And then going deeper on anything, we point people to the technical library so that it's not something that you know that is boring for you.
Terrific. Let's see. There's a bunch more questions, looking for the ones that I think are going to be most general. I think this is a good one to cover, actually, which is how much pre-work is required for each class?
For the first class, none. And for class 2 and class 3, between 30 minutes and 60 minutes. So it's not an enormous amount of time. And again, you don't have to do them necessarily between each class. We have people who we know are super busy, and we know most people here are working professionals. So you're welcome to do it at your own pace. Come back to the recordings however you want. But we find that people get the most value out of the class who actually spend a little bit of time with their engineering counterparts with some of the questions that we'll walk you through. So as long as you have, let's say, an hour between each session to spend with your engineering manager, you'll get the most benefit out of the class. And again, it doesn't have to be live. You're welcome to do that over a period of 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, and just come back to the material. I believe you have access to the material for 6 months, so there's plenty of time to go through that exercise.
Terrific. And another one is somebody just asking, would you recommend this course? I think this is, for a specific person, but I think it'll give a good sense of the kind of person class is for. Would you recommend this course for a somewhat technical program manager who's interested in pivoting to product management?
Probably not. I teach a different course with Reforge called Product Management Foundations, or PM 101. That is probably a better course for someone who has a technical background and is looking to become a product manager. So the target audience for that course is people who are not yet product managers and want to become product managers. So if that's the scenario you find yourself in, I think Product Management Foundations is probably a better Reforge course for you than Technical Foundations.
All right. So this one's a really interesting one that I think might give people some guidance. And Is there any level or test to how much technical knowledge someone has that you would recommend to help them decide for this course?
This is a very good question. I don't know if you have an answer off the top of your head to this, Alex. Let me think for a minute. I think the biggest one for me was, do you feel like it's holding you back? And this is something that's hard for us to answer for every person. But if you find yourself in situations where you feel like you're out of your depth from a technical perspective, or you've been asked to make trade-offs that you don't understand, then you have some lived experience that you're missing something technical. So if that doesn't happen to you, if you feel like you're nailing all the technical decisions and you're never out of your depth, probably not the right course for you. But I think the biggest one is that sort of nagging feeling that you're making decisions about things that you don't understand from a technical perspective. That's probably the way I would think about whether this class is right for you.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it. I think it's, one of the things we talk about in the class is actually a framework for how to know which level of technology you need to be operating at. And that is a maybe 20, 30-minute section of the class. And so it's tough to give you like a 1-minute summary of that, but at a very high level, you can think of technology as a set of layers. And this, the class actually talks about how to identify which layer you need to be working at, and based in large part on whether or not it's helping you make good decisions as a PM. Anand, here's another question. It's another specific one, but I think it helps people calibrate on the class. Is this class helpful to someone who already has a CS background and has a full stack development experience and then transition to PM post MBA?
Maybe. Maybe, but not guaranteed. Again, maybe a better class for you is probably PM or foundations. But one of the things we've actually seen from this class is it is possible to have a lot of technical knowledge and also apply it poorly in a way that makes you less effective as a PM. So a lot of class 3 is actually focused on that topic, like how do you apply technical knowledge to get the best results as a product manager, not as an engineer. So if you find, for example, that you are struggling as a PM because you are applying too much technical knowledge or because you are applying it in a way that is counterproductive, let me give you an example. If you're a PM and you're writing too much engineering into your spec, for example, such that your technical lead or engineering manager is pushing back on you and saying, no, this is our responsibility, or we will do this better, that is a possible example of misapplying technical knowledge. So sort of, I guess, on the other end of the spectrum, if you also find that you have a lot of technical knowledge, but you are not applying it effectively to be a better PM, then this class might be a good fit for you. If that's not the case, then I would say Product Management Foundations is probably a better class.
Awesome. Awesome. There's another question in the chat that I was, or in the Q&A that I was answering about somebody with a very similar background, but asking specifically about AI. Maybe I'll just cover that here. Somebody asks, I'm a PM with CS and a SWE background trying to transition to an ML AI PM role. Would this class be a better fit, or would something that's more AI focused, like a MOOC, be better? And maybe I'll answer this one, which is I think a lot of what you just said is totally spot on for this person, with the note that we do have some content on AI and ML in the content library that we built. But if you're somebody who's going to be working full-time in that space, you may find an online, like a deep dive, more valuable, especially if you already have that like CS background that may feel a little bit duplicative with some of the content we cover.
Yeah, this is kind of a theme in a bunch of the questions. So let me maybe like opine on it for a second. It's actually possible. There are a lot of things about engineering that are not taught in CS. So an example is like, how do you do good engineering estimation? Or how do you think about tech debt? Or how do you think about managing velocity? These are all things that no one will teach you in a CS degree. They are important parts of modern engineering, but they're not the literal computer science. It's not sorting arrays or the other types of things you learn in CS classes. So even if you have a sort of formal or informal CS background itself, there's a lot of things about working in a modern engineering environment that are pretty different from the concept of computer science. So we will lean towards giving you practical answers and applications of those things. Again, being transparent, if you have a CS degree and you're like, this is not holding me back at all, this might not be the right class for you. But I do think that CS degree is not the same as knows how to work in a modern engineering environment.
That's great. Here's an interesting one that I think some folks may have as a question, which is, does the course suffice for the interviews that the candidate must be given for breaking into a PM role?
No. The role of this class is not to teach you how to interview for a PM job, so we won't cover interviews at all. Some places do have often one technical question in their PM loop, so you might have heard a question like, how does the internet work, or things like that. In that case, some of the knowledge from the class might be helpful for answering the one technical interview question in a PM loop, but we are not orienting the class towards teaching you how to pass PM interviews. So if that's the goal, it's probably not a good fit.
All right, we got a number of questions here. Some of them are a little specific, so I might answer them in the chat. But Anand, I think this one's a fun one for you, which is, what was the most useful for you to pick up technical knowledge as someone without a CS background?
Ooh, interesting. I think one of the things I learned from working with Alex is being opinionated about which technical concepts PMs need to know, but more importantly, which ones you don't need to know. So I get this question a lot in sort of the people that I manage or some of the companies I invest in. But they're like, hey, I'm a PM, should I learn how to code? And a little bit counterintuitively, my answer to that question is generally no. There might be specific reasons, yes, but the answer is no. The reason I think that's an interesting example here is there's so many possible engineering things that you could learn as a PM that it can consume an infinite amount of your time. So one of the things I learned from working with Alex is it's important to have a mental model about what PMs should know and what PMs shouldn't know. And the reason that's helpful is otherwise you spend all of your time in low value stuff. If you invest a bunch in learning how to do, basics of programming, you're never going to be a better programmer than engineers on our team. In general, it's not a great use of your time. So I think the highest level concept that was most useful for me is an opinion about what I should know and what I shouldn't know, so I don't waste all of my time learning the stuff that I shouldn't know. And I think it's very possible to waste an enormous amount of time on that category.
Fantastic. Let's see. What else should we kind of cover live here? Yeah, so this is one from somebody who's interested in finding the right balance of how technical skills should be used versus not. They come from a TPM background. And they're just interested, maybe you could talk a little bit more about what we're going to cover and how we think about that in that third section.
Sure. So a little bit about, so again, class 3 is all about teaching how to apply your technical knowledge to be the most useful. We'll teach you 3 or 4 things in the class. One is we'll teach you what the PM job actually is. So we'll explain this concept of min-maxing, where you're trying to get the maximum of possible business and customer results for the minimum amount of value. We'll talk a lot about engineering estimation, why that's a classically hard problem, and how you as a PM can work with your engineers to improve your estimation. So if you find you're missing deadlines a lot or they're changing, that could be really helpful. We'll talk a lot about tech debt. We'll give you a taxonomy for how to classify tech debt. We'll help you think about appropriate ratios. We're working on it so that you don't have the pendulum swing super hard the other way, where you do all product stuff and then suddenly everything grinds to a halt because you have to spend 2 quarters doing a tech debt project or a migration process. And let's see what else. We will also teach you a little bit about sort of the right level of detail to write in your specs. So what's the right amount of engineering knowledge to put into a spec versus not in a spec? Alex, anything I'm missing on class 3?
I think so.
I think those are the big ones. So even if you are a TPM, it is very possible to get a lot of value out of the back half of the class, where we teach you how to apply technical knowledge in modern engineering to get good results.
All
Right. One
right.
other thing I'll mention on that one. One of the things we didn't talk about in this class is Alex, again, also wrote a really nice guide, and we'll spend a chunk of class 1 actually teaching you how to interact with engineers in the proper way. So one of the really important things we also teach in the class is like, what's the most effective strategy for interacting with your engineering manager, engineering counterparts. Even if you have very high levels of technical knowledge, people sometimes fall down on that topic. So we'll give you sort of a playbook or a set of instructions for what the best way to interact with engineers is. And I find that to be very valuable, even for people with a lot of technical knowledge, because you have to build a strong working relationship with your engineering team to be successful.
All right, we're kind of coming up on time here. There's a few final questions. that I don't know that we have the direct answers to in Q&A here, like whether existing Reforge members not enrolled have access to the technical library. Eleanor, I don't know if you happen to know the answers to that.
I believe the answer is yes. So I think you can get sort of limited access to the technical library if you are not enrolled in the class, but you have to be a Reforge member to do so.
Great. And maybe we can just end. Have we ever, on one final one, have we ever argued on any matter related to work, putting our friendship at risk? Why and what helped us resolve that?
Spicy. We've argued about lots of stuff. Probably more things than I can trivially count in 30 seconds or 60 seconds. But again, I think one of the things that we learned along the way is it is possible to argue about stuff in a way that respects the other person and is intellectually honest about what you know and what you don't know. And I'd say that was one of the tools that Alex and I developed over time from working together. So the good news is we've argued a lot, but I don't think we've done so in any way that puts our friendship at risk. Alex, you can tell me if you disagree with that and I'm reading it all wrong.
Well, there was that one time. No,
Yeah.
I think we were pretty aligned because we came at it from a perspective of having shared goals. And actually, one of the big things we talk about in the class is how to do that effectively with your engineering counterparts. And I think the fact that Anand and I were both like learning together, Anand learning the technical side, me learning to work with a non-technical PM, was really powerful. And we both gained a lot from that relationship. And so where we had conflict or debate, it was actually a really powerful way of improving the relationship rather than harming it.
Perfect. So we are, well, slightly over time. Anything we want to wrap us up quickly?
Maybe we just, yeah. Oh, I don't know if Eleanor's on here, but Anand, do you want to just flash up the course dates again for people?
Yes, let me do that real fast.
So we would love to have everyone join us if this sounds like the course for you. And if not, then we're glad that you have a better sense for what works for you and what you need.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, everyone, this morning. And hopefully we'll see you in May.